Evening.
Evening, hello.
Hello.
Ah,
How's it been since yesterday?
yeah, so we'll probably release this a week after the last one, but it's the next day, so don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yep. World's all topsy-turvy still, but I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to it. And then there was the old comment you mentioned last time. Perhaps we could touch on that. And just
Yeah,
before the show, we noticed someone else started a show with the same name as ours.
yeah, the
Hopefully
idea
no sign of
behind it.
things to come.
Yeah. Yeah, so might as well read that comment, and there's some philosophical background to the ideas in it that I felt like would be interesting, but I'll read the comment out. It was on number 40. Um, I dutifully, sorry, no. uh, Yeah, I listened a bit. I listened a bit about the part with the arranged marriages, and I cringed so hard. Sure, it can work out great sometimes, but when it's bad, it's horrible. The both families will give a support network is like the best case scenario. I do partly agree that nowadays we give up too easily on relationships, etc., but I'd rather have this than have even one person be in a terrible arranged marriage where they're stuck because they feel the pressure to stay in the relationship. Oh, sorry, I'm sure you mean duty, because in these cases, if you dared to leave the relationship, they'd probably be outcast by their family, as they are the ones who arranged it in the first place. So, yeah, no thanks. And there was a bit of a discussion between us about whether it's worth diving into this, and we ended up coming to that the point of this podcast that we're doing is conversation to pull conversations in directions they wouldn't normally go, to stretch the Overton window out
Hmm.
and to find uncomfortable questions to poke.
And to have the space to explore ideas that would be unacceptable for most people.
Hmm. Yeah,
Hence
that
the in the wilderness thing.
yeah. So I demand my right to be wrong, but I'm
Hmm.
not sure if I am. I'm not
Yeah,
sure playing both ways.
there's still diamonds to be found in the rough.
Hmm. And we'll find a cowpat and we'll find a diamond every now and again, but you can't tell the difference until you've explored the ideas.
Yeah, it's prospecting almost.
Yeah, and that process itself is of value. So
So to be
I
clear,
think,
I didn't want to address this.
hmm,
Um, Mostly because I felt like the person sort of missed the point of what we're doing here. And I don't blame them on them. It's likely the first show they watched, and we can't start every single one with an explanation of what we do because we did that at the beginning of the show and it took shows to do.
hmm,
Um, but you said you wanted to make a steelman case for the point of view, and you thought that there was a value to be extracted from that.
yeah, yeah.
Hence why we're talking about it.
So now, the person who's written the comment is definitely right that things don't always work out in arranged marriage situations, that you can have uh, toxic relationships that people are stuck in with no escape that can go as bad as the worst relationships can go. That's definitely true. And that kind of situation can definitely make it harder to leave those relationships. But I think that it's missing the point that there are toxic forms of all types of relationships, and there are all types of social patterns, really. And there are positive forms. Like there's all that talk about toxic masculinity, and never really clearly defined well or consistently, as far as I'm aware. But it's like there are toxic people and there's toxic behavior, and some of them are men and some of them are women and so on. But like you've got toxic relationships, and the idea that what was it? rather have the modern tendency to give up too easily on relationships than have even one person be in a terrible arranged marriage where they're stuck.
Very individualist.
Yeah, it's like the one drop fallacy. I think that's what it's called. The idea that if it doesn't work in one case, that's too many. And I think it's driven mainly from a I feel uncomfortable, or I would feel uncomfortable in the situation. I feel uncomfortable with this idea.
Yeah.
And I would be against enforcement of living a certain way on people who find that way of life uh, inherently uncomfortable. Like, I think it's a basically libertarian view of people should be able to live pretty much in the ways that they feel drawn to without impeding on anyone else. Like, I have as much right
There
to
you
swing
go.
my fist as I like until it meets your face.
Okay, well, yes, but the asterisk in that really comes in on defining what impedes someone else.
Mm,
You know, the non-aggression principle is it's great in theory, but when it comes to, okay, I have my right to swing my fist around until it meets your face, sure, but walking past a guy doing that on the street certainly affects you.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like, okay, how are you going to culturally define that? Is that assault,
yeah,
even though there wasn't direct contact?
yeah, and there's always ways to push the limits, and whatever line
Yeah,
you draw on acceptable behavior, there's ways to push it. There's loud music, there's parties, there's untidy um, front lawns, and there are people who like loud cars or so on. There are always ways that some people will push other people's comfortable boundaries.
mm. And I
And
think the spectrum from libertarian or liberalism, whichever you want to define it, to conservatism or leftism, because both of them are on the authoritarian side, is where are those boundaries acceptable?
mm,
Not should there be, but it's just a matter of degree. Because
yeah,
I think even most authoritarian, conservative, traditionalist type people don't really have a problem with people doing things in secret.
yeah, the religiously motivated people might, but the more secular conservative, it's like, here's the public space that we will conserve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. And you have your private space, and that's conserved.
Yeah.
Um, it's not 100%.
So I want to steelman this guy's
Hmm.
argument if we're
Hmm.
going to be going up against it. But at the same time, there's sort of a okay, sure, you can prefer this over that. But like you said, there's toxic forms of every social contract or
Hmm.
downsides. There is no solutions, just trade offs.
Hmm.
And okay, you get more. I'm not even so sure that the average person is happier under the system where they have more freedom, um,
Hmm.
which is a bit of a provocative statement. But even when it comes to relationships,
Yeah. Well, I can certainly see that.
lack of structure is inherently chaotic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If you've got 1,000 options in the shop, then you're just paralyzed by indecision because there's always a better option that you're missing. If you've got a
yeah,
million
an
options
ability
and you
to
can swipe
refund at
through
any
Tinder,
moment.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, ability to refund at any moment without any form of social cost or economic cost for one half of the party.
mm,
Like these are obviously problems,
yeah.
and
But at
it's
the
a
same
very
time,
sliding scale. Like you can have soft cultural enforcement of these things, or you could have
mm,
authoritarian cultural enforcement of these things.
that's true.
If you
That's
were
the
to
thing. It's
go
like,
on the on the arranged side of the argument,
yeah,
you
it's
could
like
have
just restrict
tyrannical,
people or,
which is horrifying,
mm,
or you could have soft cultural enforcement, or anywhere in between. Hmm. Does
we've got some of that in modern Western society, although it's been tapered down a lot over recent years.
I would say the majority of cultural influence is actually pushing against it. I think the thing that's still pushing for it is traditionalism in terms of we have nature as human beings.
Mm,
And that expresses itself in terms of political ideology, in terms of cultural forces, and individual desires, which should be granted under the, hedonistic, everyone makes their own choices kind of attitude, but it's not. We respect all rights for people to make their own choices in their own lives, unless they're ones we disagree with.
like I feel like there's worth to making bad choices more difficult. Like
Yeah,
limiting access to alcohol to minors seems like a
yeah,
reasonable thing.
yeah.
And making alcohol like
Or like the
taxing
anti-smoking
alcohol to make
campaigns.
it expensive. Yeah. Yeah. It's like here is
Yeah,
something that is
and that's cultural.
negative for
Like,
your health. Yeah.
like there was laws that helped push it along by changing the, where in public space you could do it, but it was already going that way.
Mm,
And that's cultural enforcement of we have decided that this is not a thing we do anymore.
mm,
And because of that, it starts getting pushed out of society. And now people look at people who smoke as the oddity and not the other way around.
mm.
I think it is to do heavily with the point you made before of, what do you call it, the raindrop fallacy?
The one drop fallacy. It was used
One drop.
to describe, or if some back in um, American history, if someone had one drop of black blood in them, they were considered black.
Okay. Not
Yeah.
aware of that history, but I think that's kind of hilarious. Um, well, a great recent example would be the one death is too many from COVID.
Yeah.
And like, look at all of the costs we reap from that. It's unreal.
Mm.
Um, sorry, I need to turn my light on because that flickering and focusing is going to be a right pain in the ass. Apologies. Yeah, I mean, if you're not able to have a conversation of trade-offs, if you make the priori assumption that one side is always going to be better than the other side because one individual could possibly be harmed by the other side, you're ignoring all of the harm from the current society. Like what is the suicide rate of men since we did away with enforced monogamy?
I
This
hadn't
is an
looked into the correlation of that,
uncomfortable.
but yeah.
I imagine it's quite strong. I am just sort of throwing that out off the top of my head, but I know very well that a majority of men are very unhappy with the current dating dynamics.
Mm.
And you could say, okay, is that better? An epidemic of male loneliness and pain, is that preferable to abusive relationships existing, which they still do,
Yeah.
and to a large part, even in spite of all of the social pressure around them forcing them to go apart. And as far as I am aware, contrary to most of propagandistic film interpretation, when things were that bad in marriages, even the churches split them apart.
Mm.
Because, shock horror, religious people aren't a big fan of immoral actions by people.
Yeah.
So when you have a guy who's behaving in such a way and people know it, tends to be shunned from the area, unless he's, incredibly rich and powerful, in which case I don't think it really has much to do with the enforced side of the enforcement argument.
Mm.
Because you'd still have that same problem today. Rich people are still horrible to their partners, although the divorce laws have helped that a bit. Not that that's a good thing. He has a strong argument, and I get where he's coming from.
Mm.
But the other side of that is we are not here to make political platforms. I'm not running for election, and neither are you. We're not saying this
Mm.
is our policy that we wish to put forth in the world. or even that we wish the world to be more the way that we want it to be. You know, not everyone is running around attempting to remake the world in their own image.
Mm.
The point is simply to say, hey, look at this thing that culture has deemed unacceptable to speak positively about, and actually, look, there's a value here. Not all, but some.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that there is a form, an equivalent of arranged marriage in Western society as well, through matchmaking. Like you'll have
Mm,
now the
your
image I
friends.
saw it presented with, well, there's friends, but also like groups of often older ladies who know everyone in the community and have all the gossip and like, oh, such and such would go well with such and such. Oh, we should get them together, and
Yeah.
then
Well, if you
that
think
yeah,
that if you
that's
think that
very
parents
beneficial for
don't
introverted
still
people.
attempt to do arranged marriages, I think they're kind of people are kind of missing the point.
Mm,
Like I think a lot of parents, this isn't projection, my kids are too young, and I don't have anyone in my life I would do that with anyway. Um, I think a lot of parents are likely to have their kids play with other kids of friends of theirs that they know, and have a little bit of a I wouldn't be too upset about this if it happened,
mm,
rather than overt pushing like it used to be.
mm.
And I'm sure that I said when we discussed that of having third parties as vets on who you're dating is probably
Mm.
helpful.
I know I could have benefited from that.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mean, almost everyone could
Mm.
think about the times that they came from. Like you were saying, the older people in the village would be discussing the younger people, and they would say, "Okay, let's try and push that person out because they're bad. These two would be well together. Those two would be well together." And in a large sense, yeah, this really gets to one of my massive frustrations with modern beliefs. The traditional patriarchal structure that Western society and every society had until it was destroyed by men, by the way, in the suffragette movement, was built and designed to protect women from other men. This is
Mm.
why women were handed by hand from the father to the husband. And the point
Mm.
was, I've protected her, now it's your turn.
Mm.
And we vetted you for years. That's why they had long engagements, and they had rituals, and they ate with each other's families, and they did trade. Not because they were trading her like livestock, but because they wanted to ensure in every way they possibly could that this was the right thing for their daughter.
Mm.
Because shock horror, even patriarchs loved their children and daughters especially. I mean,
Mm.
it's kind of stupid to have this idea of, oh, primitive man from 100 years ago. He didn't like women. He hated them. Like, are you stupid? We are literally evolved to love women, period, and to
Mm.
protect them, period. And we built an entire society, every society, to do so.
Mm. There are,
And
of course,
then,
toxic people in
you
every
know,
society who try and take advantage of those without the ability to resist.
yeah, which is what I believe men did when they put women in the workplace and destroyed the structures that protected them. Because it was men, women voted against having the vote. They voted against equality under the law, and they voted against being pushed into the workplace. And then they were blocked from voting on it further by other men, which is, democracy in action.
Yeah, it's that meme or joke about um, outspoken feminist partner shouting about stuff. Um, if World War Three's announced, I'll be in the kitchen, dear. And it's
Yeah.
like, who wants to go to war and die?
Yeah, which is a large part of why they didn't want that.
Mm.
And they also understood that it would be unfair. Like it doesn't make sense. The system they had worked. Yeah, no, we're getting off I think we're probably getting off track going into that one. But
Mm.
these structures were there to protect people, and they did that most of the time. And I do not accept the argument that it's better now because you have your hedonistic freedoms. Because a lot of people are really unhappy with that.
Mm.
They've been, ending up with the wrong people and being abused plenty and then discarded to be abused and discarded again by someone else.
Mm.
And that's not an improved state. Neither is misery and loneliness and childlessness.
Mm. I'm just looking at the structure of the comment, and it's really interesting. He mentions it's laid out even-handedly, but then well, he listened and then he cringed so hard. It's like, okay, emotional reaction, which it's like a fair enough emotional reaction from a certain perspective and background.
Yeah.
Sure, it can work out great sometimes. When it's bad, it's horrible. That describes most potential situations. Things can go great or they can be horrible.
Actually, that's a
Cars can
really
crash.
good point. You could make that about any state of existence ever. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like both families will give a support network is like the best case scenario. It's like, well, yeah, you would
Oh
hope
yeah.
that both families would provide support and
And
help.
the idea is that hopefully society can be organized around both families providing support.
Mm,
You want to you want to optimize for best case scenario.
yeah, but bad scenarios are going to happen. You have, but setting up a situation where that's almost the norm, where you have, say, two adults move cities away from their extended family and then get together and have kids in isolation. It's like, okay, having leaving a toxic family as an option seems preferably with the support of the wider community, but even without that, being able to walk away and make a new life somewhere else should be an option and find your new support network there with friends.
It always
Um,
was. It just incurred a higher cost.
yeah,
Yeah. Which
but
I
at the
think I
same
think a
time,
high cost is a better than zero cost, is my fundamental
mm,
argument.
everything has a cost, and if there's no upfront cost, there's a cost down the track. There's a knock-on effect.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're at a point where in some situations there isn't just no cost, there's an incentive.
Mm,
That's kind of a problem.
yeah, like the literal explicit goal of finding a man to pay child support so that she can feel supported, which I've heard anecdotally.
Yeah.
Hmm. Don't
Yeah,
always come
or
out of it.
realizing that you'll get paid more if you destroy your family. So,
Mm,
well, that's advantageous. Look, I think it also comes to the other point of, okay, you're maximizing the well, it's the one drop fallacy, but say you really did believe that more people would be happier under current system than old system because you're trying to maximize individual not suffering. Fair.
mm,
Okay, sure. Here comes the other problem of cultural evolutionary problem. If your proposed solution ends up destroying the society in which you live in, it's not a real solution.
yeah.
Unless it can be iterated upon over in a very extended period of time, it's not helpful.
Mm,
You're like, oh, people are not, they're a lot happier and they're not suffering and they don't have to do things because they don't have responsibilities. Okay, sure, they feel good. I don't actually believe they do because human beings are like responsibility. But whatever, sure. Um, okay, but now we don't have enough kids,
mm,
and there's a tax problem there, and then it shapes the stability of the society. And I know this is very extreme, but everything has a knock-on effect, and societies can only take so many negatives before they crumble. And when they crumble, it's not pleasant for those who are there. suffering increases. Short-term gain, long-term loss, assuming that it is a short-term gain, which I personally don't believe, but obviously this person does, and that's fair enough on their point.
He does agree that we give up too easily on relationships these days. He just sees that as preferable to terrible arranged marriages, which is an
Which is
assumption
fair
about
enough.
how it's more likely to go from an emotional perspective.
Yeah, and also that gets back to the point we made before of we are trying to go outside the Overton window to discuss the things that are unacceptable, to find the gem of value and bring it back. And in the real world, the real answer is to go, you're totally right, but maybe there's something from this that we can use and meet in the middle. Soft cultural enforcement with an exit strategy. So having divorce, but not having no fault divorce. Something like that. That's in the reality. And sometimes you have to take the extreme, even in an argument, to get the compromise to be in a more reasonable place. That's not what we're doing, but we're pointing out that you say this is too far, and I don't disagree. I wouldn't be for that either. But I'm saying this is too far. And I'm using that as a counterbalance, and hopefully we can meet in the middle. Value from outside the Overton window. Because once upon a time, the idea of hookup culture, of no-fault divorce, of no societal enforcement, of no arranged marriages would have been outside the Overton window. And someone would have had to discuss that and pick out the pieces of value to the society and bring it back and meet in the middle. And they would have been called cringe and horrible in all kinds of ways. And the exact same.
Oscar Wilde?
I know the name, but I'm not familiar.
He wrote books which were meant to be scandalous in their time, like one about a guy who got a painting of himself made, and the painting ended up getting all the diseases and aging instead of him, and so he stayed forever like 20.
The portrait of Dorian Gray.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, I have it. I have it over there.
Yeah, and he ended up playing out the philosophy of the only solution to a temptation is to give into it in every form. And then he was introduced into this by some older guy who was basically doing it for fun. And then this guy went off, traveled the world doing that, and then came back and fell for this guy's daughter. And he was like, hell no.
Yeah. I haven't actually read it, but I've heard it's very good. I imagine it'd be quite tame compared to reality at this point.
Yeah, by today's standards, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's some elements of it that, like the ability to cure STIs by antibiotics for the vast majority of them, that changes the game a lot compared to the time when the book was written.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that
I
people
might not
have
touch on that one.
no nose due to syphilis and things like that.
Yeah. Perhaps those things were good indications. And now it's like, oh, consequence fee, free. Awesome.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's like no cost is bad.
Yeah.
But there are what is it? Getting a bad disease is bad, and there's going to be people who make mistakes, and you want enough consequence, enough cost to
There's optimal pain.
to discourage people from playing with dangerous things. But there will be people who, through personality structure or inherent internal drive or whatever, feel pulled to sail around the world, doing things that are ridiculously dangerous, or climb mountains, doing things that are ridiculously dangerous, go to space, which most people would not touch, but some people feel drawn to do. So they will pay the cost gladly.
And I think changing that out to societal level is the way to focus on it. Because it used to be what you want ideally is things that are in the long run damaging to a society are in the short run damaging to the individual who does them.
Yes. Yes.
And if you set up a system where it is incentivized for the individual to do the thing that damages the society, you're screwed. Or even if there's no cost, it's probably still not amazing because you're
It's an
going to have people who
externalities
do it.
issue.
Yeah, yeah, like tragedy of the commons.
Mm.
Quite literally, just on the common space being, well, the public sphere or the culture, even define it as you will.
And how to set those costs on a social and socioeconomic level is one of those things that an individual can't do right. Individuals can definitely
Yes,
contribute to it, but one
like
person
price
cannot
setting.
decide. Exactly. So it's a market thing. It's a
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
sociocultural market of
interesting.
how distasteful is this, and therefore how much effort is it worth putting in to discourage this?
That means it will follow a boom and bust trend like in a market economy would.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's playing out. Yeah, the 70s and free love, and oh, that didn't work so well, and now we're seeing a sort of a weird swing back the opposite way with
Yeah, we're
virginity
hitting
rates going
the
up.
we're hitting the authoritarian swing of time to crack down on all of the debaucherous behavior, which is
Mm,
healthy. I'm not saying it's not. And I'm likely just another what pawn caught up in that societal wave. There is never any final solution. This is the point that
yeah.
Peterson made. The point of the left wing and the right wing was to say, there's too much order, we need more chaos. There's too much chaos, we need more order.
Mm,
And each will always argue that, and the instincts of the civilians at the time will shift from one side to the other. And hopefully, doing that, even though they'd be swerving all over the road, they'll steer the ship, steer the car, whatever the analogy.
mm,
They wouldn't get it dead on, dead right every time.
yeah. You've got rocks on one side, icebergs on the other. You don't need to be on a perfect straight center. You just need to be away from the bigger rocks and icebergs.
Yeah, and maybe you grate up against each side as you do the swing, but as long as you can repair that on the
Mm,
other side before you come back again, then the ship will continue to go forward, even though there would be damage.
mm. And as soon as you're over onto one side, the temptation is to pull back the other side even harder, but then you hit the rocks on that side. And
Exactly.
what they
It's a
lose
course
sight of these
correction.
days, yeah,
Yeah,
people
if you
lose sight of the
course
fact that
correct
there are rocks
slower,
on the other side.
exactly. Yeah, you never, and that might have been that person's point. I'm saying, hey, we're on the rocks here. Oh, we should turn this way. Not really, but there's value over there. No, I am saying we should turn that way. That's true. I just don't mean to go as far as I was discussing.
Mm,
And he's the kind of person who's saying, hold on, wait, there's rocks over there too. Although
yeah.
he would say there's no rocks that we're running over now.
Mm,
Well, he did say there was, but a
yeah.
lot less than I would argue.
Yeah. So it's almost an example of that kind of emotionally mediated guiding light that the
Mm.
social market is made of.
Collective unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone has a different perspective on it.
Yep. And then all together we can collectively steer the ship of culture. Hopefully. Like
Mm,
we've known for ages that things have gone too far towards the liberal direction. And now we have this massive Republicans movement across the world. Nationalism is coming back, traditionalism, conservatism, religion is coming back. Like you're saying, virginity rates and traditional marriages,
mm,
these are things on the rise. And even the discussion of political ideologies that are not based in liberalism is
mm,
becoming mainstream to a certain extent,
mm.
whatever the mainstream is now. And this is the massive correction that we've been, screaming about forever. And, 40 years from now, we'll probably need another one to go
Mm.
back the other way because we went too hard and we made things too rigid. And all of a sudden, it was illegal to skateboard or whatever.
Well,
Who
40
knows?
years from now would be the 80s. 40 years in the past would be the 80s. I think the timescale is a little longer than that.
Probably. I was just sort of
Mm.
ballparking, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's probably, I imagine, like market economies and like lots of other things, there'll be very long sine waves, and then along
Mm.
the sine waves, there'll be very short ones.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
like
there's probably several layers of that,
mm.
all
It's like
mixed in.
the swing back seems to be driven by the people who grew up with the downsides of a current pendulum position in their faces, so to speak.
Yeah, but then you got to realize there's also the massive long scale swing of the liberal economic order,
Mm.
and that's a whole hell of another issue. But I think that's probably almost outside the scope. And then you get into religious level timescales and Kali Yuga and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
How far out in the cycle do you wish to analyze? At which level is the important one for the discussion? So short term, since probably, yeah, Reagan would be my guess at the, what's the word of that? Aperture of this sine wave?
Apogee?
Aperture? The point
Apogee
between the
is
two
the
peaks?
apogee is the term used in orbits for the furthest point out, the greatest
Yes.
altitude.
But I mean, is it delta? The distance? No,
The
delta's
wave,
between two different ones.
the wavelength.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that'll do, wavelength.
Mm.
But yeah, between the trough that we've been in and the last peak and the peak that we're probably about to hit, or at least start heading in that direction quite seriously.
Mm. Was
So maybe, yeah,
Reagan
50, 60 years, something like that.
what
Or even Kennedy. It
historical
might be
period?
Kennedy. I mean, who knows?
I don't have a good lineup of which presidents oversaw which historical events, so I can't line it up in my head. Which one
In
was
all
Cold War?
fairness, I don't either. 80s.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
There's definitely a
It's
swing there.
yeah, it's definitely hard to say because it's such a tumultuous time. But we can certainly say that we're at the part of the pendulum where it swings rightward into conservatism, into strong borders, into defined cultures,
Mm.
and with all the chaos that we've had through the chaotic opposite side of that, which is liberalism, that's well needed until it gets too rigid and too ossified and starts being a problem and will swing back the other way.
Mm. That's an interesting thing in individual people's lives too, because you get a lot of people who uh, build their identity around a particular thing. Like, I do this hobby, I drink this beer, I vote this way, I
Mm.
shout about the sports team, and so on. And locking yourself in, locking your sense of identity into certain opinions or preferences leaves you really fragile when any of those are threatened. It's a sense of
Mm.
attack on yourself, on your sense
Well,
of
it
self.
is. Yeah, because they've underpinned their society, their identity on these things. You take those slats out, and then a lot of the things they believed about themselves aren't true anymore.
Mm,
You know, I really like myself because I'm cool and I like this sports team, and that makes me this awesome guy. And I got the wife and the kids and da 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 da. And then all of a sudden, that sport isn't cool anymore. Like,
mm,
oh, guy goes to talk to the bar about, oh, did you see the game last night? And everyone's like, what? You watched that? What are you? Doesn't
mm,
feel too good anymore. And then he starts to question, oh, did I ever really care about this, or did I care about other people's opinions?
Well, the immediate response is that sense of embarrassment and anger that most people would get hit with
Exactly, because that's a defense mechanism
defensively.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, the more fundamental you build in these things as axioms of your personality, the more of an attack it feels. And sure is being used to manipulate the population at a large level through the political process and through TV and media.
Mm. Like this is a threat to our democracy that you see from the US media. It's like, okay, define that, please. Like,
Yeah, still not a
yeah,
democracy, United States, but that's okay.
but even the word itself and the way they're using it, like the way they're trying to mean it, is like democracy implies representation by the people. It's not a particular. Oh, they're using it to refer to a particular political allegiance rather than
Yeah,
the democratic
our
process.
our democracy.
Yeah, it's not yours, it's ours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're threatening the safety of our elections that we oversee. They're
Mm.
being very explicit.
It's funny how when you listen to the things people say and look at what they do, they kind of tell you what they're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, human beings aren't amazing at lying.
Mm.
We are evolved to be communicating with each other what we are doing.
Mm.
The whites of our eyes and body language and everything.
Mm.
It's more valuable to have all of human beings being unable to hide secrets to you as an individual in evolutionary history, even if you are trying to hide secrets.
Mm.
Therefore, we're bad at it.
Mm.
God, the culture's changed. The internet's changed everything. Just
Mm.
think about secrets. Well, Kennedy was assassinated. We all know now that it was the CIA, but at the time, everyone just believed in the story.
Mm.
Okay,
It was individual investigative journalists who
and it took
saw the.
forever.
Mm.
Even 20, 30 years later, when movies started coming out explaining it all, people still found that to be unacceptable.
Mm.
Like, okay, as soon as the news came out about Jeffrey Epstein, for example,
Mm.
everyone knew what that was.
He was Epsteined.
It was Epstein, yeah. And like people were talking about it in cabs, people were talking about it on street corners with
Mm.
strangers. Oh, yeah, that guy didn't kill himself, no way. Everyone knew.
Mm. The Boeing whistleblowers who died mysteriously. It's like, or McCaffrey, the guy who was saying, "I'm not suicidal." Just
Yeah,
everyone know that I'm not
yeah.
suicidal, and then died, didn't he?
Well, even Epstein said that.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's like, I'm definitely not killing myself. Let's say that real clear. And then,
yeah,
okay. How'd that happen? Unaliving? Is that what we're supposed to say?
yeah.
It's a
Uh,
great comment the other day on someone's video about guy was describing the assassination attempt, and the video had the guy saying someone made a genuine unaliving attempt on the president. And the comments were like, "This is insane. Why is he having to say this?"
yeah.
Hey, brave new
Uh,
world, eh?
try and restrict language, and it'll run away and laugh at you.
Well, yeah. All that it happens is new words come to mean the thing that you wanted not to be expressed. Like, let's go,
Yeah,
Brandon.
yeah,
Yeah, people know what that means. What does that mean?
yeah.
Oh, you should know. Yeah. People have things that they wish to express, and
Mm.
as much as you tell them you're not allowed to express that these words because you have to be specific, they'll just express it a different way.
Mm.
And if not, then they'll go forced underground, and they'll just start dragging people down underground slowly and converting them until they have critical mass enough to come back into the public sphere.
Mm.
Happens. As always, human beings have a nature. Society and culture is an emergent phenomenon and cannot be controlled.
Hey, I've just got an image in my head of the people who think they can control it by controlling the headlines and the narrative and the the science and so on,
Mm.
getting angry at people for being too stupid to do what they're told.
Yeah, but also believing that they're so stupid they have to be told.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like, who's the stupid one here? The one who is failing to achieve a result, or the ones who are seeing through lies? But there's intelligence versus education slash indoctrination versus wisdom, because
Oh,
wisdom
yeah.
is
We can
independent
certainly
of it.
see that those who are in public office are not actually intelligent.
Mm,
That's been pretty clear the last few years. It's not a machine that selects for intelligence.
mm,
It's that old thing about a system isn't what it's called, it's what it does. And it's a sorting mechanism, certainly not for intelligence or
mm.
morality or wisdom.
Ability to climb hierarchies, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a sorting mechanism for psychopathy
Mm,
because it's a power-based hierarchy.
yes, because the nature of the hierarchy is critical in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And those who game hierarchies without merit are psychopaths.
Mm,
That's almost a definition of the evolutionary niche. Generally, they get kicked out of meritocratic hierarchies, but when a hierarchy gets corrupted, then only the psychopathic can climb it.
mm.
And power corrupts,
Especially if you don't have a strong emotional guide to start with.
like a religion.
Well, religion or empathy.
Oh, you mean individuals? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
individually, yeah. I mean, as the guiding principle for the hierarchy.
that can still be manipulated and malapplied.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be harder though.
Hmm,
Psychopaths will always seek power.
hmm.
Not much you can be done about that. There'll always be an evolutionary pressure requiring their existence.
We need them for. Oh,
I don't know if it's we need them,
hmm,
but it's that there'll always be a space for them. The less of them there are, the greater the evolutionary force that compels them to succeed.
If there's only one psychopath, then there's
Yeah,
rich pickings.
yeah, exactly. That's why it ranges from like 2 to 6%.
Hmm,
And because I think when it hits 7%, all the other men come in and kill them all. And then when it drops down to almost nothing, the guards are let down and they start growing again.
hmm. Sonny, that you touched on it before of the impulse for men to protect and provide. I was had a walk with someone the other day, and talking to him about what he wanted in a relationship, and he was talking about how he would like to be an entrepreneur and build up a business and develop his own resources and that sort of thing, but at the same time he recognized that finding a special someone, finding a partner, after that, you're most likely to end up with someone who just wants the money. And there's more to it than that, of course, but this was the way he was viewing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I can see that.
and that you can't climb that, you can't have that mission while also maintaining a family and relationship well. You can't dedicate enough time to entrepreneurial pursuits while being a good partner at the same time. That was the way he saw it. And he'd come to recognize that he could be happy and contented with a wife and kids and go to his job and take care of them and so on. Just a small, fulfilling life. And that I think a lot of guys with a path towards that where it's less about getting a prize in the sense of the wife and family, and more about the fulfillment of being useful, and there's a value that comes back in return from that, but it's not any sort of I will get the thing. It's I have things to give. Who will accept them and give in return?
Mm. Well, I think he's very right in the analysis that he'd probably just be happier having the simple life.
Mm,
Like it is a very good life. I would say that he can probably make it work the other way around if he was explicit enough up front.
mm,
Being like, this is what I'm doing, you're welcome to come along for the ride, but these are the conditions. And that would be quite attractive to women.
mm,
And on the other side of things is, why is he seeking such high unique status and success? I think if he analyzed his own subconscious, he would find it was likely through some form of hedonism and ideal access to women, plurality. And I think he was right to sense that that life is incompatible with wife and child and successful life that way.
mm,
Not completely, obviously, people make it work, but there be dragons. There's more dangers that way.
mm.
It greatly increases the risk. And for what?
Yeah,
Financial
we don't.
freedom?
That's one of those things that has some costs and is
Yeah.
difficult to achieve, but certain people feel driven to achieve it, and then we get
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. And it's some people are amazing at it and do that. The question is really, okay, you want to go after that lifestyle. Exactly what minute percent of the population are you?
Mm,
Are you a 1% person? Are you a 0.01% person? Because if you're not, you just get a job like everyone else. Not to
mm.
beat you down, but like almost no one is an entrepreneur for a reason. And some people are incredibly standout talents
Well,
and
there's
do that kind
entrepreneur
of
and there's
thing.
small
And
business owner.
they would have done it anyway.
Like you can have a small business without being an entrepreneur as such. I think like the person who owns a shop, like that's
Mm, I
say
think I think perhaps I'm
25%.
getting, yeah. I guess it depends on what he meant by entrepreneur. I might
Mm,
be getting manipulated by the sort of hustlers academy bullshit algorithm
mm,
that is sort of a cultural view at this point
mm,
of make all the money without doing any of the work through bullshit businesses and then drive around fast cars and have lots of women, which I think is what the average person thinks of when they think of entrepreneur at this point because of messed up algorithms like that.
mm. It's funny. There's no free lunch, but there's so many people who think or try to tell you that there is, and you just need the right way to get it.
By
And I
giving
think
them
a lot of
money, how they get their free lunch.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people who are ready to jump at the chance to earn a lunch,
Mm.
and that a lot of the issues these days in the socioeconomic sense come from people putting in a good, hard, honest effort to earn a lunch, and they can tell they're working hard, and it's just not working. Like people don't get upset about there being uh, inequality in a society as long as it's not too ridiculously extreme. It's social immobility. Like I'm
Yeah.
on the bottom, and I've been on the bottom all my life, and no matter how hard I work, neither I or my children or my children's children will be able to climb. If you can
Yeah.
be on the bottom rung and climb up to, and then your children climb up another two through hard work, and then fail through your own failings, like okay, you screwed
Yeah.
up and fell. Like okay,
Yeah.
that's
Social
acceptable.
mobility.
Yeah,
is the key. And yeah, we don't
mm,
have any of that anymore.
yeah, and
Wages are screwed.
you need people on the bottom being able to climb up, but you also need people on the top receiving the consequences for their own screw ups and making them fall. Like,
And yeah,
eh,
and not rigging the system so that no one can climb up to dare challenge them.
yeah, yeah, and that's a source of a lot of
Well,
contention
yeah,
these days.
and we don't have that.
Mm,
There are pockets of society that most people don't apply to, that if you go to, you can be more successful than you reasonably otherwise would. So for any men out there who are having this feeling of everything's hopeless, it's hard to get a job, it's hard to climb up the ladder, etc., okay. Yes, that is true almost everywhere, but it's not everywhere. Personal advice would be to do almost what I did, which is to find the dirty jobs that people don't want to do.
accept the hardships, go out in the rain and the snow and in the
which
mud,
is
and
which is
the
what I did,
future.
or be a plumber.
Yeah, well, plumber and electrician, they get paid megabucks these days because there's no youngsters.
Yeah, and also everyone's forgetting how to do the basic shit. Everyone's going
Yeah,
off to be software engineers and stuff, and it's like, okay, you realize that the guys building the house get paid like $45 an hour to just
yeah,
hit nails into wood.
yeah. What's the starting rate for driving a digger?
That's stupid. It's like $35 an hour.
Yeah,
It's really good. Yeah. And even for engineering stuff like you went into, you go on the
mm,
practical side of that, the guys who work in the engineering shops out here and make custom parts for all the farms and local businesses, stupid money.
mm,
Everyone. And I mean, even me, I'm a basic farm labourer. I have no qualifications, and my only experience was from starting on a farm and doing stuff. Granted, I'm smart, so I can learn quickly, and that's an advantage. But I still get paid pretty well, and I didn't have to go any form of degree to get into this position.
mm.
Found a place that was willing to take me, and then shifted again.
Yeah,
And I was paid pretty good from day one. Like, I was unsure about my first farm job because obviously it's scary and all kinds of stuff. But I did the math that night on how much better I'd be off on a weekly basis, and it was unbelievably good. It was almost like having tax taken off,
mm,
and that's such a massive unburden. Honestly,
yeah,
the poorest people in the world would be so much better off if we just didn't take all their fucking money through taxes and
mm.
spend it on gender studies programs.
Yeah. We don't notice it so much in New Zealand because it's not something you have to do. It comes off automatically. It's like comes off your wages when you get paid, and then you've got GST on the stuff you buy, and it's just you see the sticker price, and that's the price you pay. You don't need to add taxes on top of that, so you're not aware of it.
Yeah, yeah, but everything would be 15% cheaper, and we'd all get paid 30% more. Like,
Mm.
boy, that'd be a good world. Um, I think
But then
people are
there'd be
just
a cost.
people. Yeah, but I think it would be better. I think people are very tired of money going to useless things.
Mm.
Because at least in that world where you have to pay for everything yourself, you get to choose what you pay for.
Mm.
I'm not running around paying for the healthcare of the old smokers and stuff. I'm not running around funding queer studies in universities.
And there were ways of
Banks have to
protecting
do that
yourself.
shit.
Yeah, there were ways of protecting yourself and your family before the government funded social safety net. Like if you look back these days,
Yeah.
it's all faded away because one of their main, like, what was it, the Odd Fellows or the Freemasons did it too. But like, you pay your dues, you participate
Hmm.
in it, and if you are poor, you can probably come to some arrangement. But then I heard an anecdote from a person I think his father was raised on the money from, I think it was the Odd Fellows, one of those fraternal orders, where his father was a police officer or fireman or something, died in the line of duty,
Mm.
and then his mother received enough money to raise I think, three kids.
Yeah.
And
But
it's like,
this is the insane thing that people seem to have this belief of, well, if the government doesn't take all of our money by force and then give it to the less fortunate, which we want to care for, then people won't care for each other. So, hold on a minute. You are saying that we all agree that it's good to care for these people and they need care. Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Why do we need a middleman? Why
Mm.
do we need someone to come in and steal all our money by force and take a huge cut of it and then give it back to the people we care about? Why don't you just go give them some money instead?
There's a reason why the stereotype of a pimp has gold teeth and a chain.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it is. They're the mobster
Mm.
walking around with the bat going, boy, it would sure be not bad if something happened to your shop. You better pay us protection money.
And then you say, no, it's not, and then we'll try not paying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Prison.
try even just finding a way to honestly live without participating in that. Not saying I want to get stuff for free, but saying, okay, I don't want the services or the tax. I'll just go live in the woods. Oh, you got property tax. No, no, I'm growing my own food. I built this house. Whatever.
No,
And
yeah,
little
there's
good,
no way you can sign opt out.
yeah,
But well, in a certain sense, okay, sure, but you still have military protection,
that's true.
so you can't really opt out.
Mm.
And I'm not saying you should. Yeah, I personally don't think you should be able to, but
And so
obviously we've gone too far.
there's a value to having there are public services that are worthwhile. National protection, like military is
Yeah,
often dumped on as sucking up all the money, but at the same time, it's like if you've got countries competing, big country takes over small country and then sucks them dry in some form. It's like
yeah,
that's the
military
thing
is
that happens.
incredibly important.
Mm,
Yeah, we sort of forgotten that wars happen in the modern world, which is why we're about to have one, or a hot one. Obviously, we're in a cold war at the moment.
mm. Yeah, and depending how you define it, like how much do the algorithms that are affecting people's mental states count?
Oh, yeah, I believe those are acts of war for sure,
Mm,
because they're done by governments against the peoples of a different nation in order to destroy that nation. And they've
mm,
been happening for about as long as the internet's existed, and before that through cultural endeavors. Or is it Yuri Bezmenov?
mm.
How is that not war?
It's just quiet war. It's
Yeah,
conflict. It's yeah,
it's secret
manipulation.
war.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, it's information war. The old info wars, eh? It's read about a lot.
Yeah. So we're stuck living in the world we're in.
Mm,
All we can do is, well, for a start, we can live well, like we were talking about last time,
yeah, yeah, and we
and
have to do our best for not for ourselves, for family.
mm,
Like I'm really, yeah, I'm going to keep harping on this, not today, but in general going forward. Of the focus on ourselves as the primary objective of life is the thing that needs to be destroyed but changed.
mm.
We used to focus on duty to serve others as
Mm.
primary,
And these
and
days, that has the
self-sacrifice for that as the primary action, and then looking after yourself is, I'd say, secondary, but almost non-existent.
mm. Well,
Care for your
looking
family,
after yourself
care for
is a
yourself.
part of it. I think, like if you
Yes, to a certain
the
extent. Yeah.
the idea of service these days, like there's
Mm.
a connotation or an image that comes to mind that's essentially slavery. Like you serve someone, you are under their boot. It's like that's not you're not under the boot of your children.
Yeah. It's a very good propaganda piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Freedom. We all want to be free. Free to do what? Be hedonistic.
And
Hold
miserable
on.
in your
Yeah.
apartment all alone while you stare at your computer game screen late into the night. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Right. Utopia.
so
That doesn't
free.
sound helpful.
Mm,
Yeah. That's it's a very good way of manipulating people.
mm. But there's
Yeah.
also the trap
It's
of
almost yeah. It's almost same level of successful propaganda as the communist had,
mm,
just in a different direction. Well, you think about it, they went to all of the people and went like, "Oh, you're unsuccessful because of that guy."
Mm.
And it bites on several motivations, which effectively runs the case of, hey, you know how all those short-term, impulsive, hedonistic things that you kind of really want to do and know are evil? They're not evil, you should do them. And not only should you do them, but that's morally righteous.
Mm.
It's like, oh, second you accept that, well, I could do whatever I want um, if I accept this philosophy and I get to give up all my responsibilities. Oh, great, I'll do that. Deal with the devil. You lied to yourself or rationalized yourself into doing these things.
Mm. I think
And
one of
that's tough.
the I'm not sure if it's a trap, but one of the issues that makes it hard to change things these days is the idea of this bad, fight against it, that bad, fight against it. And it's all like, here are lots of bad things that we must stop. So, okay. Where's the good things? I
Yeah,
don't ignore the
vision.
bad things, let them burn themselves out. What's a good thing that you want? Like, find something to vote for, find something to promote, find someone to help
I think that's why
yourself.
Trump did so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, his message of this is the thing we're aiming at: make
Mm,
America great again. Like, okay, you can disagree with that, sure, fair enough, but he had a
mm.
vision.
Well, he almost got helped in that by the people who sort of laid out the stuff he was talking about and spent so much time shouting about it. And they of course said things that were different to him, but a spotlight and a focused direction, even if it's not what you're actually saying. Like people see there, think, okay, he's doing a thing, which they say is bad. And then you listen to him, so, oh, he's not doing that thing, but he's still doing a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
so
I
he's
mean, yeah, you gotta have somewhere to run to when you're running away from
mm,
something. Otherwise, you just make things worse.
yeah, you run into something else that you want to avoid.
It was a
Oh,
Peterson's quote of, "You need to have an aim, otherwise you'll spend your life running headlong into brick walls."
yeah, but also like um the pointing at things that are bad and focusing on them all the time. It's like if you're trying to run, they're only trying to run away from things, away from hate speech, away from transphobia, away from all sorts of things, and then they just run into another thing and another thing, and they're so
Yeah, yeah, they've got their eyes blind to where they're going.
well. They're no, they've they've got filters on. They're not blind, but they're filtering out anything that's not something to hate. Oh, that must be a miserable life.
Oh yeah, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, to hammer everything as nails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. To an
my
activist,
job,
everything is a whatever you call it. Yeah,
an existential threat.
yeah, yeah.
No wonder they're so nervous and have such derangement. Everything is an existential threat, and that's how I see everything in the world. I therefore must attack everything. A nice gesture from his father to his daughter. Patriarchy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it is, but that's good. But that's my own opinion.
Yeah, it's like
Ugh, insane.
yeah, every value is judged negatively. It's like going around the world seeing anything that's promoted and then focusing on any perceivable negative aspect and then tearing things down because of that. It's like cancel
Mm.
culture, finding
Yeah, well,
anything you can tear
what
down
is it?
someone with.
Critical theory. That's the point. Deconstructionism.
Mm,
The whole point of it is to take any given aspect and deconstruct it into its initial parts, criticize them all, and therefore somehow you'll make something better out of it. But it's a philosophy designed to rip apart everything of value explicitly by the creators of it. And then those people became the professors of the university that educated everyone this way.
then if you want to build something, I've seen several times the sort of the way to beat the mob is basically ignore them. Like there's an element of when they demand you do something, you say no, and when they demand you prostrate yourself It's like, no, I do my thing. Go away. But you
That's only
don't.
powerful in a message to the other half of the argument.
Sorry?
Like standing up and saying no is not a message to the people who are demanding you do the thing.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, like Peterson had a massive influence on everyone because he stood up and said no. Not because anyone who was attacking him listened, but
Mm.
because everyone else heard it.
Well, some people did. Some people went in and said, "I'll find the thing he said that's so evil," and then they went to listen to all his stuff and said, "Oh, actually, this makes a lot of sense."
Someone, oh my God,
But he
I
was going
imagine it.
towards something.
I would legitimately love one of those people who is sufficiently intelligent to write a book about that experience.
They went on his podcast.
Well, imagine the dreams that would haunt that person at night in the middle of that process
Yeah.
as the critical mass is approaching to have the cultural shock moment of changing belief and be haunted by him and his dreams and crabs crawling up out of the floor and everything. It would be
Lobsters.
unreal. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, pay good money for that movie, man.
Oh. Yeah. But I think the thing that, like, Jordan Peterson demonstrates it quite well, but it's not about being particular. It's not about being super articulate like he is. It's not about being super stalwart to resist. It's about, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to do this thing. Shout, shout. I'm doing this thing. I'm
Yeah,
moving towards this goal. I'm building this. Tear it down. I will adjust strategy because I want this thing. And then it's like, if you just do your thing, then they stand there and shout and no one listens. So they go and find someone who will listen when they shout.
yeah, exactly. They only have,
Yeah.
yeah, the mob only has power as long as you give it to them. And at a certain point, when enough people have said no, people need to start ignoring them.
Mm. And mobs can be dangerous and they can take out individuals in various ways. So I'm not saying that you become immune to them, but I don't know of better defense.
No, no, giving the mob more power by giving in to their demands is never a good strategy.
Mm.
You never apologize when the mob comes after you.
Yeah, apologizing to individuals is different, but
Yeah, but
apologizing to
even
a mob,
still,
even well, if the
yeah,
mob is saying you should apologize to this individual, it's like, I'm not bowing down in your court of public opinion. I will not prostrate myself on
yeah,
the streets to whatever person you decide. So I'll
yeah.
meet with
If
them
I
in
am ever
private
going
and
to do this, you need to leave me alone, or
yeah,
else I refuse to ever do so.
yeah,
Your mere presence makes the likelihood of what you wish to happen not happen.
yeah. And then they're stuck in a situation which they won't perceive clearly of what would it be? I will
They
do
just get
the
more
thing
angry.
when you go away. And then they'll just stand there shouting.
Yeah, they'll just get more angry at you.
Yeah. And show their face. It's like there's a
And to your
oh
point about the answer is to just go and do something,
mm,
you do something else. Did did you see Freedom Toon's latest? It's um,
no.
he did an anti-woke cartoon. It's a dog just listening to music on the street corner, and then someone comes along and pauses it and like rants about Palestine or something, and then the dog just press play again and keeps dancing, and it just keeps going and going and going for ages, and the other guy gets more and more angry, and then he breaks it, and then another speaker shows up with another dog, and they keep going. And the point is, just but we're doing this.
Yeah.
But this thing, we're doing this. This thing, we're doing this.
Yeah. And it's not even you do this, it's like telling them what to do. It's like, I do this. You should do
Yeah,
this. No, I do this.
yeah,
I do my
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, not through me.
Mm,
Let it succeed. Let it even thrive. Only not through me.
mm. There's an interesting piece of philosophy that I came across. Um, how do I phrase this? Because it was described through imagery rather than explicit philosophy, so meant as a sort of mental training exercise rather than uh, teaching as such. But things that try to take something else down. Like I'm trying to use the modern terminology rather than the semi-spiritual phrasing that comes to mind for it, but the act of trying to deconstruct other things is deconstructive on the one trying to do the deconstructing too, or the group. If your goal is to tear down things, then you
You
bring that
rest
on
upon the
yourself.
world that you live in.
Yeah, you make your bed, and then
Yes.
you have no choice but to sleep in it, and you can sort of
Yeah. Well, you
charge forward
destroy
and
it.
find.
You
Yeah,
destroy a bed, and now you sleep on the floor. Yeah.
yeah. And so someone who's focused on tearing things down destroys their own bed. And someone who's focused on building things up builds a bed for
Yeah.
themselves to sleep in. And of course, someone who's torn down their own bed while trying to torch the neighbor's house, metaphorically speaking, can still steal another bed. But that's more
Forever.
difficult than having, yeah, it doesn't work forever. Sometimes someone will just say, no, my bed. And then
And if
they'll
everyone
steal
does
it
that
and
at once,
break it.
then there's no beds.
Yeah, and of course, one person doing doing something that the entire society objects to doesn't work. But there's a strength in numbers thing and a quiet
Yeah.
strength.
Yeah. Critical mass problem.
Yeah, like there was that song that a rapper put out about Trump's shooting. That what was it?
Sorry.
The left the left can't aim and the right doesn't riot.
No, no, they're too busy like tucking their kids in at night.
Yeah,
Yeah, people with families don't burn down nations. It's
yeah.
single men who are bitter about not having women. That's who burns down nations. Shock horror, skinny, scrawny white guys who are real ranty and ravey about capitalism and the evil of the successful.
Give him a girlfriend and the opportunity for a job, and a girlfriend who's encouraging him in that direction. And not all, but most will just be like, love, companionship. Yes, yes.
Well, yeah,
Sorry, gang, bye.
that's why the second that they get any form of success in their life, that all stops immediately. Because
Mm,
all of a sudden women like them and all their previous friends hate them, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of new friends who are like, "Hey, you're doing well, good job, man." They're like,
mm,
"Oh, oh, this is nice.
yeah,
This is better." Or yeah, they get their first paycheck, or they start their own business or something like that, and then they get taxed, and they're like, "Hold on a minute, this is my money. I
yeah,
earned that." And then, oh, wait a minute, I thought other people didn't earn what they got. Oh no.
yeah. So other people have difficulties too, but this wasn't just me getting stomped on. And then you just
I
get
think
on
all
with
the
life.
philosophers of old would be rolling in their grave to see what we've become. We're the most
Oh,
and least educated people ever.
yeah, yeah.
Most
That's an
amount of time and the
interesting
least value, like empty calories.
empty meaning. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Educationally malnourished,
Well,
but overfed, so obese.
if you look at the lifestyle we have and the amount of labor that we have to put in to achieve the things we do, like, oh, I've got a pile of clothes that need washing. Let me dump them in the machine and hit the button.
Yeah, like I have two
What?
robots that vacuum my floor. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, how
they
many
just do it
servers do
every
we have to
day.
pay?
I mean,
Yeah.
one. It's a small house, but
Well, yeah,
still, I
yeah,
mean,
but
it's something that my wife doesn't have to do. I don't have to do it anymore.
yeah, and then you add a car or something like
Yeah,
travel,
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's unreal. Yeah,
compact. Yeah,
yeah. I don't need to have horses outside with a buggy anymore.
yeah. Don't need to go chop wood. Get a heater. Well, then you've got
Well,
to.
well, I do chop wood. Yeah, I spent the other day cutting up trees and chopping them into firewood. So yes,
But
I
it's
do
not
that.
that bad. It's like
Oh,
it's
it's
a
great. We had
that's
music going.
something.
We did like 4 trailer loads.
Yeah,
It's
that's
pretty good.
something that I think has been.
We got too many
Oh,
trees.
the idea of having to do physical having to put in physical effort for your own existence has been vilified. Like the idea
Yes.
of the universal basic income.
Yeah, anyone who has any kind of contact with physical work is to be looked down upon as lowbrow. And
Mm.
that's a bitterness and resentment from intellectual elites who are mad and upset that they are so smart, yet they don't know how to change their tire.
Oh yeah, the lawyer saying,
And
"Why do I
and
have to pay
knowing
the
that
plumber
they
so much?"
can't
It's
do
like,
it.
can you do it?
Yeah, they
No.
know that they couldn't go and do any kind of physical work. They don't have the hands for it, they don't have the motor skills for it, and they know that,
Mm.
and they're angry that even though they're the smartest people on the planet, they don't know how to keep the lights on physically.
Be quiet, Brenda. It's deciding to clean itself.
Yeah, and that's why I came out to this life, because I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to have respect for where it all starts. You know,
Mm.
we worry about the weather as like an actual part of our job. We grow grass, we feed cows, we take that and we make that into food. And that's the
Mm.
beginning of everything.
Yeah.
And, something breaks, what, we're going to pay someone else to fix it? We got time. We live
Mm.
here. Like, there's 3 of us on this farm, and what that means is this is our home.
Mm.
This whole place is a business. If something goes wrong, why would we pay someone else to do it? We just fix it ourselves. Why not? At a certain point, there isn't someone else to call, or it doesn't make sense. Like, why would you call someone else to do a job that you know how to do yourself?
Mm.
And that's, I don't know, maybe where the resentment from the intellectual elites comes from. They don't know how to fix their own car. They don't know how to change their own oil. They don't know how to cook their own food, half of them. And then
Mm.
they look down on all the people who keep them alive as the servant class as beneath them, where in reality they couldn't live without it.
Mm.
We're better than you, that's why you do all these things. And then the servant class is looking at them going, you are not better than us because you don't know how to wipe your own ass without our help.
Mm.
And then you sit up there and ruin all of our lives through your intellectual games and policy making
Mm.
that you can only do because by the grace of us, you have running water and food on your table and a fridge that's powered.
Yeah, the real fallacy of, or a real fallacy of that intellectual class. Oh, as I was talking about it, it ran away.
Hey, you're right.
We'll come back in a minute.
But it is really nice to get up in the morning, go outside and go, oh, it's cold.
Mm.
Like, I'm not going back inside. I got stuff to do.
Yeah,
I better make sure I get some firewood when I get home.
yeah, and like having those things to do, it's like, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? I'm bored. I'll fix the thing. It's
Well,
like,
yeah, that's a big part. Like, I don't have a heater here in this
mm,
house. I have a fire,
mm,
which means, oh,
a little bit
look at that.
jealous.
Oh, I just had a pop up on my screen. I probably should learn to disable that. Um, yeah, having a fire. Yeah, it's
Mm,
illegal to have them in cities or whatever, which is insane. But yeah, I don't have a
mm,
heater connected to electricity in this house. I don't have a heater in this house, period. Which means if I want to have the house be warm, I need to actively keep the fire going. It
mm,
means I need to manage how much firewood I have. I need to bring it in. I need to sort it. And if it starts to run low, I need to go cut some more.
mm.
And there's something really valuable about that. I'm not quite sure,
Yeah,
but to be
but
actively involved in these things, it's grounding,
yeah,
as the hippies
the
would say.
lack of the lack of any of that grounding might be contributing towards the idea that we can get rid of farmers. When it's like,
Abstraction.
yeah, yeah, you're so
Farmers.
abstracted and isolated from base reality that where does food
Yeah.
come from? The supermarket. Where do they get it? Oh, they source it from somewhere. And it's like, no, it comes from dirt, from a
Yeah.
farmer who grew it. And then it was
Yeah.
processed by people. And then it arrived on your plate all magically prepared.
Yeah, we have a very high mortality rate in this industry, just to be clear for all of those who are, alive because we feed them.
Mm,
As always, it's the jobs that get, ridiculed. Like even plumbers, there's a high mortality rate.
mm.
All these jobs that are dirty jobs done by men, they get paid well because they have a high risk. But
Plumbers,
I don't know.
drainlayers, and gas fitters. Yeah,
My
dealing
brain
with
keeps
thermal
telling
gas.
me yes. My brain keeps telling me that there is a cost to abstraction
Mm.
away from base reality. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I can see it. I can see it. Like the further away you get from contact with base reality, the more able you are to rationally convince yourself that you don't need it, and then end up in a position where you have nothing of the things that you need to live. If you
Oh,
have a hand in base
yeah.
reality, you are consistently aware of, oh, these are not things that I could do without.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like crazy diets and like, okay, sure, you can survive with highly processed stuff
Or
of one
high
form or another.
abstracted political beliefs.
Yeah, or because you've got a selection of fruit sourced from the entire planet that you can constantly eat. You've got the peak of plant nutrition available at all times, and so you can be like,
Avocados.
yeah, yeah, which like so
Yeah,
many seasonal fruit that okay, sure, have them when they're there, but like,
yeah. You know
or
what grows
meat,
here?
like,
Potatoes.
yeah,
And it's frosty and cold as shit outside. It's hard frost every morning. There isn't pineapples just here.
mm, yeah, or like if you've got meat, it's like, where did that meat come from? The supermarket, it arrived in a tray. It's like, no, 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 no. What was the animal's name and personality? And what
Yeah,
makes it justified to kill, or many would say murder, that living creature for you to eat it? Because that's part of life.
yeah,
You will die and your body will rot. And
yeah. I mean, they. Do you think these animals don't have personalities? You're kidding yourself.
mm,
I mean, people have pets. They should logically think, oh, each of the animals are individuals, but people don't. They think cow, and then they think 50,000 of all the same thing.
mm,
But we've got what 500 cows here. You, there are ones that stand out from the
mm,
rest, and if you look at them enough, you can see massive differences between them in not just genetics, but in personality as well.
mm.
I don't know. Yeah, there's a problem with. I suppose it's Tower of Babel. Get too far off the ground, things start to crumble,
Mm.
and you can bring the whole tower down.
There was a analogy I saw that talked about stages of civilization through this. That what was it? As you get further disconnected from base reality, like if you compare um, semi hunter gatherers with philosophers in a city, and the hunter gatherers, they live in a shelter made of bits of animal and tree,
Mm.
and they probably were there when that animal was killed and that tree was cut, and skin the animal, turn its hide into a shelter of clothing, and so on. So you are intimately connected with base reality at all times, and you get that feedback of, well, the world you live in is complicated, and you have carved out a place in this world that you must negotiate with in order to live.
I
Whereas
know where you're
in
going
mm,
with the comment about philosophers, but I'd like to throw an asterisk before you get into it,
mm,
because I think you can think of two camps of philosophers.
mm,
You can think of modern
yeah,
philosophers and ancient philosophers.
yeah, or Henry David Thoreau type, where most of his philosophy happened when walking in the woods. He's a famous
Yeah,
American writer, I think.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be like an exception to the rule, but
Mm,
I was more getting at the point of like ancient Greek philosophers. Like they had plenty of encounter with base reality,
mm.
death, hunger, starvation, lack of
Well, of course,
nutrition.
yeah.
Yeah, like disease,
But I think they still
even
lived
in
in a
cities. Like, they
yeah,
lived well for the time, obviously, and
yeah.
that'll be reflected in a lot of their work, but they were far more in touch with reality than someone like Rousseau or
Mm,
Foucault or any of that lot who are just unbelievably out of touch.
mm. Yeah, well, that drives the point home more because, like, they lived in houses, they had suffering, they saw animals killed probably.
Yeah,
But the difference between the hunter-gatherer shelter and the house is okay, it's made of square blocks. You see straight lines. The
yeah,
environment that you live within is at least partially formed by a human mind. It's nature with the rough edges worn down a bit.
yeah.
It's still got some hard bits, but then you look at modern society and it's
Abstraction of nature.
yeah, it's an entirely human-centric abstraction of nature. It's like we put a tree there and we let it grow this big, we make it that shape, and then we
More,
mow the grass there, and
it's more wall than garden.
yeah, and it's all from a human mind. Therefore, it's all fully comprehensible. Therefore, you grow up and learn that the world is entirely manipulable and comprehensible, and then
Mm.
in that less uh
Yeah,
negotiated existence, you can sort of send your abstractions out in new directions. So you get a burst of wildflowers in a frosty environment. They grow
yeah,
quickly, and then an annual plant, it grows quickly in
yeah.
that particular environment. And then as it changes the environment so that it can't do that anymore, you lose the connection to base reality. You stop maintaining the fundamentals of the civilization that you're part of in a socio-cultural sense, and then that crumbles.
Oh, it's
Then you
such a
get the
brilliant
cycle.
observation. Yeah,
Not
because
mine.
no, but still, even
Yeah.
to point it out, it's you're right because when you grow up in this abstraction of nature, of reality,
Mm,
same thing, then that will become the base reality for the people who grow up in the abstraction.
mm,
And though the rules of that place and the rules of actual reality are different.
mm,
So of course they're going to grow up believing completely bullshit things about the nature of reality or even nature itself.
mm,
Because what they think of when they say reality or nature is the human manufactured one.
mm.
Because they
Oh,
don't actually understand real reality.
it's like
They
people who've never seen an animal killed. Look at the what do you call it? A Amish abattoir where they gently take care of the animal through its life and care for this animal, and then okay, time to die now and do it as humanely as possible, and then cut it up and sell the meat. Someone who's never seen an animal killed looks at that and says, "Oh, blood and cutting up this living creature, horror!" It's like, okay, where the hell did your meat come from? Like, I
yeah, because
guarantee they weren't as happy.
no, it was complete abstraction.
Yeah.
The reality and even the nature that they mean, like the environmentalists are probably an amazing example growing up in cities. And when they
Mm,
say about state of nature, they think like a public park where
mm.
there aren't predators,
Yeah.
where it's beautiful and manufactured and people and you're not, breaking your leg and dying of dysentery.
It's that
They don't
laissez-faire thing. The
yeah, they
woman is
drop off
amazing.
and immediately go, "Oh no. This is not what I thought it was. I thought it was kumbaya
Yeah.
and brother bear." And it
Like, no,
was
this
instead
creature will
like
rip your arm off
yeah, yeah,
casually.
it's nature is metal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That should be mandatory viewing in schools of just like, here's just a little reminder what reality is.
yeah, yeah. It's like you compare the life of a deer or bison or something in the wild, hunted down by a pack of wolves and
Yeah,
bitten to
eaten
death.
alive.
Yeah, it's like that is a brutal end. And
Yeah.
running for its life every few days, constantly on the lookout for predators. Compare that with a cow on a farm who's just, oh, new grass. Oh, no,
Yeah, and
no.
it's just like friendly reminder, in nature, things don't die of old age.
Yeah, yeah,
Just ever. It's like, oh, what do they die of? They get eaten alive, they die of disease, or they break a leg. And then
yeah.
usually after doing one of those things get eaten alive.
Yeah, and you release your pet into the wild to have a life, and then this fat and happy pet is like, what? What's this? What's that? Ah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yep, that's just
some
food
will
for something
survive,
else.
but yeah.
Yep. Yeah, wouldn't last a day. And same with people. At least people
Yeah.
are wild, an actual wild that wouldn't last a day.
Oh, there's reality TV shows all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Scared and Alone was one, I think.
yeah. And we've already removed most of the predators off the planet anyway. I didn't imagine what it was like when we were fighting with saber-toothed tigers. Life
Yeah.
used to be pretty rough for people. And then we sit here all plump and talk about how horrible it is that someone didn't use the right word to address how we feel in the current moment.
Oh, I'm so sorry that that's as hard to
Yeah,
you as being eaten alive by a wolf.
yeah. This is traumatic for me. I decided that I am not the sex that I am, and a person didn't pretend to call me the thing that I decided that I am without me
Mm.
telling them ahead of time. Traumatized, really. Maybe these people need a little bit of trauma. Well, I mean, that's what we're going to
Yeah,
get. We
yeah,
keep
yeah.
going in this direction of weakness. We're going to get massive, world-shaking chaos and pain and suffering, and it's going to be a massive filter.
There was this
And all
concept I
those
came across.
who don't die in that are going to come out real damn strong and real actually traumatized.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like the
and that'll pass through generations. Like the people who came back from World War I weren't so amazing to their kids, and then they
mm,
went off to World War II and were also not so amazing to their kids, and they still run the world today, which is why they're fucked
mm, yeah.
and
But
why they didn't love their kids.
there's this concept I came across a while ago called anti-fragile that comes to mind. Like you've got things that are resilient, and it's like, okay, here's a hammer, bang bang. Okay, that's pretty strong. Didn't break. Here's a seashell, bang bang. Oh, that smashed. It's fragile. But then it's like, here's a bone, bang. Oh, I bruised it. Heal. Okay, now it's stronger, right? As long as it's not, as long as the damage is not too great, things that are anti-fragile become stronger through adversity, and humans are anti-fragile.
Mm,
And if you've got safe
yeah,
spaces and no
yeah.
opposition ever and
Growth comes
convenience,
in resistance of a challenge.
yeah, it's
It's
like
just
even
like
like
yeah,
spending your life
like
walking
trees grow
on.
stronger in the wind.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember going tramping with a guy who eh, you could see that he hadn't spent that much time off footpaths.
no, he
Um,
didn't know where to put his feet.
yeah, like not to an extreme degree, but
Mm.
like there was a river with some stones that were big stones, and so I was sort of stepping from one to the other quite calmly, and he was like on all fours, sort of and sort of carefully going, and
Mm.
it's that difference of stretching
Experience.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like what was it? The don't interrupt kids when they're skateboarding rule in Jordan Peterson's book. That's
exactly.
them stretching themselves in adversity. They fall down, they get hurt, they get up again.
And we used to
And
have society based around that kind of philosophy. Like,
mm,
all right, it's, what are you doing inside? It's light out. Get outside or you come back when it's dark.
mm.
Like, the idea was, yeah, you're going to run into trouble. Yeah, you're going to get, hurt probably. But you'll have to pick yourself up and figure it out.
Well, the parents' thought was probably go away and stop bothering me, but that's the philosophy that underpins it.
Yeah, well, when you have more than one child, actually having the children next to you all the time is a real big pain in the ass.
Yeah,
And it's like, actually, maybe you could go out and do something risky. I'd like that. Go away. I mean,
yeah,
when you
and
have
then
one, it's okay because you can treat them like an adult and you can talk to them and mold them and all that,
mm,
and they'll be like a perfect little pet. That's exactly what they'll be like. But the second you have two and they start interacting together, you realize, like, oh no, their instinct is 100%, even though they want to please me, to be kid and be chaotic. And it's like,
oh yeah, oh yeah,
okay, so you're going to learn from your own experiences. You don't want to listen. Fine. Out you go. Go
yeah,
learn.
yeah. Yeah, had a play date these school holidays. A girl whose nature is to be a little bit rough, and my son was
You
enjoying
could use
that.
that. Yeah.
He eventually decided it was a bit too much, and he'd had enough. But they were play fighting, and um, he's got better control than she does from wrestling with me, and sort of that was too hard to. You don't hit that hard, and me sort of knocking him over, and him then bouncing up again and coming back at me, and so on. So I can be rougher with him than I can other kids, not because I'm well.
Because
I
he's learned.
know that he knows how to handle it. He knows how to fall because he fell
And he,
softly and
and he
been a
knows
little
his
harder on.
limitations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so he was playing with this girl, and she just sort of swings, and every now and again, one of them would get hurt a little bit, and like her mum and I were sitting there watching this happening, making comments about, "Oh, I wonder how long till this tears." Like it
Well,
was, they were being rough with each other in a controlled, safe environment, but it's okay. Here's the zone of acceptable crazy behavior, and they were within that playing around. Like you get.
and it's worth going that distance even until they hit the point where there is tears.
Mm,
Because you're not going to, what is it, zone of proximal development. You're
mm,
not going to make any progress always staying in the known territory. And yeah, it'll be push, 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 and now it's not fun anymore.
mm,
But that's a really important data point, a really important signal.
mm.
Next time, maybe they won't go quite that hard, or maybe they'll go hard in a different direction.
Yeah, and they'll
And that's
inform
how
each
you
other's
build the
behavior.
map. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
because I
if
don't want to
you were
play
to
with
jump
you at the
in
moment
and
is a
go
great
no
feedback
play
for a kid.
fighting,
Yeah.
yeah, if you jump in and go no play fighting, then all of a sudden neither of them know their limits, and if they ever hit someone, they'll really hit them
Mm.
unintentionally.
And if you've got a group of 5 kids going out, and if there's slightly rough kids who can throw a stone, right? There's the fear of some guy coming up and trying to say, "Get in my car, I'll give you lollies." And like if some guy tried that with a group of slightly rough farm kids, like he's getting rocked through his car windows if it even gets that far. Like that's not
And
going
they
to
also
work.
know how to run
Yeah, yeah, they
and
know how to
jump
run.
and climb and kick and fight,
Yeah,
rather
yeah, like,
than like idiot child who's like, oh, an adult. I'll trust everything they say ever because my parents have never done anything wrong to me ever. And therefore must all adults be like that. And I've never been outside, so I should probably trust this person. They're taking me somewhere safe, which is inside.
mm,
As always, we try our best efforts. Some people try their best efforts and achieve the opposite results.
mm,
You make resilient children, you don't protect them. That's yeah, that shouldn't be that hard to figure it out. Obviously, you protect them somewhat. I know, blah blah blah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
completely.
You take away the worst bits of the world while giving them enough
Do
to learn with.
small doses of risk, and
Mm,
you increase it over time as they become more competent.
mm,
But there needs to be that presence. There needs to be. They need to have the ability to fail.
mm.
You can't have a world in which they never fall over.
Yeah, like the ability to stand up after falling down for whatever reason, whether it's because life clocked you a good one and you were knocked down, whether it's because someone was out to get you for some reason at some point, whether it's
Yeah,
because you tried something and it didn't work, you're gonna fall down. And
yeah, yeah. If anyone's a new parent,
yeah,
don't immediately rush over to your kid when they fall over.
yeah,
Like I have girls, and both of them, when they fall over, will laugh because that's what they
mm,
learned. They learned that this is okay. This is funny. Oh no,
mm,
I fell over. Ha 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 ha. Up I get and run again. Like
mm.
even when there's blood, they're still like ha 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 ha. Oh look, I'm bleeding. And if they legitimately hurt themselves, they're gonna cry anyway.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, if a child is actually really hurt themselves, they're gonna feel the pain and know the difference.
mm,
And you're not gonna be able to know the difference between hurt and injured unless you've been hurt or injured.
Mm.
And you're not going to do that unless you fall over. As much as I wish it wasn't the case being a father, there is a real world, and that real world is full of pain and suffering. And my girls were going to go into that world. So I see zero benefit in coddling them.
Mm.
There's no, we're supposed to be a model of the world, and there's no point giving a false model, because all that does is set up a false model that will later be broken. And I cannot think of anything more traumatic than having your entire worldview shattered because your parents gave you one that was a safe and cozy and comforting worldview, and then you encounter something horrific and dark.
It's not just kids. Like, as an adult, you get more autonomy in defining the world that you interact with, and you still get that choice on yourself this time. Like, I've got a friend who he found a thing like Boy Scouts for adults that you do solo.
Sorry. Jesus.
It's all right, good audio filtering, cut it out, at least from my end.
Oh man, my apologies. I don't know where that came from.
Um, this had a series of challenges to do as an adult, and one was to have yourself set up so that you could be able to leave immediately and survive for a week. And he already had a van set up with a solar panel, and he was being a dock ranger at the time, and so he take that off and sleep outside without a tent. Well, I've already done that. Let's try without the sleeping bag. So we did it with a blanket, and so on. And so that you can stretch yourself further. And if you are, as most of us are, so many steps back from that it's like, oh, that sounds so terrifying. I could never do that. So go for a damn walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything is an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, don't just complete a circuit. Right? Stop. Look at the rocks. Oh, there's lichen on those rocks. That's pretty lichen. Oh, there's several different types.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, that tree got broken. What happened there? And oh, there's a bug. And that leaf's got some damage to it. Is that insect damage? Look, engage with the world. Look at the complexity of the world. Like, there's a quote about, what was it? I could be trapped in a walnut and count myself king of infinite space. This is more about going into yourself and your mind, which is an extraordinarily valuable thing to do. But like, take one leaf, look at it. Okay, pretty shape. Get a
Mm.
magnifying glass. Look closer.
Yeah.
If
There's
you
a
got
quote about infinite divine complexity in an ashtray.
yeah. If you look at it through a microscope, you'll see so much more detail. And there was a thing I heard about, was it the scale of the universe that we live in? Like, if you took a human hair, now I don't the I can't quite recall the precise dimensions of this, but if you took a human hair and blew it up to the size of the Earth in diameter, and then cut it across, atoms are still like salt grains.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Program. Yep.
there's a lot there, and then there's just as much or more going out larger. Like, we're in about the middle between
Yeah.
the scale of the
It's a
universe
fractal.
and
A
atoms.
fractal scale. Yeah.
Yeah,
And at every world, it's a world unto itself. At every level.
yeah. And so as a person living in that world, you benefit from interacting with that.
Yeah. Well, to the point about just go for a walk.
Mm.
This isn't gonna, try and be some flex about how hard I work or any crap like that, but we have here we do 11 days on, 3 days off. That's standard roster. But in the middle of the 11 is a weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
on the Saturdays and Sunday on that weekend, we do 3 hours of work across the whole day, about an hour
Mm-hmm.
and a half, an hour and 45 in the morning, a little less in the afternoon. And that consists of getting in the little drive around buggy bike thing, going up to a paddock of cows, winding up a fence by hand, that, little temporary fence, which opens up a bunch of food for the cows, putting it back out again, and there's two of them, so you swap it over, right? And that's, I don't know, 50, 100 meters across, something like that. It's just that we walk up, walk back down while carrying these things, get a knife out and cut some plastic off, some wrapped up food, and lift a little thing over top of it so that they don't just stand on it. And go and do that around like 7 mobs of cows. Oh, you fed them all. Go home for the whole day, come back in the afternoon, check them all, make sure they're all right, walk around a little bit, pick up like a leftover bit of plastic. And that's your whole day. I imagine for a large percentage of the population, that would be an incredibly difficult task. Just walking. Ground's a little bit uneven. You have to like lift some things, or just the idea of walking around for 10 minutes, resting for 3, or you drive to the next bit, walking around for 10 minutes.
And you don't need to be a 6'2" gym bro to do this.
Well, clearly not. I am 5'0".
Yeah.
And I can do this. And I have like debilitating bone condition that makes me very vulnerable and weak. And I do this for a living because I have respect for the people who do these things. And it's not that hard, but I've seen people come out and try it and legitimately struggle because all they do all day, every day is sit. And I don't know, there's something about that that's so insane and abstract.
Yeah, I'm probably closer to that than I would like to be.
Yeah, but you go on hikes and stuff. You go walking. You do physical activities with your son.
Yeah,
I got you out and we had you having a go at milking and all that when you were down here, and you're not an unfit person, which is more the point I'm getting at, is that the majority of people are probably so disconnected and abstracted away from real reality that they couldn't walk around for a living. Literally just walk and get paid for it. They couldn't do that. And that's insane.
There was a thing I heard recently. Someone was talking about the impact of drugs on people who are near diabetic. So their body's at risk of getting diabetes because things aren't going right. Okay. Here's a bunch of drugs that I could give them. Exercise is better than any of them. Just better diet, better exercise. Getting out there, getting weight under control. And I'm not saying weight under control is a strict diet, you must get this fixed. It's like, just go for some walks, get some fresh air. Get vitamin D in your skin.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many...
It's what, 60 minutes of exercise per week is better than the entire pharmaceutical industry. And when I say 60 minutes of exercise, I mean walking.
Yeah.
That's it. It's almost nothing. If you get some sunlight on your skin, some cold exposure from being outside, and you put yourself in VO2 in zone 2 for an hour a week, you'll stave off almost all health conditions for your entire life and need almost no drugs for your entire life. And we can't even manage that. At what point was that line from Batman that victory has defeated us?
Oh, yeah, fourth turning.
Yeah, like, it's too comfortable. I have my little comfortable world in here, which I like. But when I go to work, I have to go outside and do something. And that's why I chose that. Because if not, if I went to the life that I was going to, I was going to be a software engineer, or I likely would have gone into networking as a guest, I would be in air-conditioned environments for my entire life. And in order to stay healthy, I would have to go to, a gym and be active and proactive about it on my own personal time. And that's hard. It's hard to motivate yourself in your downtime to do something difficult.
Yep, my problem.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be doing exercise at home to gain muscle mass. I haven't done it in like a month. And I have everything that I need. I even pay money to things that are supposed to help me do it. I still don't. It's very difficult to motivate or for me at least, I know some people are a lot better at this. You're better at this than me. It's difficult for me to motivate myself to do things when it's outside of like official capacity, when it's
Mm,
outside of a job, and that's part of the reason that I did it.
yeah. You should hear how much I beat myself up in my head for not doing the things I think I should do.
I can imagine. Just knowing you, yeah, I can imagine that's pretty brutal. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that way too. I think a lot of modern people have that problem.
Mm,
But yeah, I wanted to have a physical job and one with meaning.
mm,
You know, you know, or what happens if you miss a day at the office as a network engineer? It probably is okay.
mm.
You don't get your project work done to make things better, and maybe there's something catastrophic that happens, but there's probably someone else to deal with it.
Mm,
Where it's like here, you know, it wasn't that long ago. A friend of mine that I worked with took off time to take his wife to the hospital to get blood clots checked. It
mm.
was very serious. Um, and on the morning that he was going off to do that, I effectively broke my ankle. Right, but there's no one else to call.
Yeah.
There's literally no one else. So I worked on that foot for 2 days because if not, she wouldn't have got the care that she needed. And
Mm,
if I had gone off and got the care that I needed, then 700 cows would have starved and also all gotten sick because they would have, if you don't milk them, they get mastitis.
mm.
And that's like blood poisoning effectively for them. Actual consequences to not being there. And yeah,
Mm,
that sucked for those 2 days, but I don't know, there's value in that, of
mm.
knowing that I am here for a purpose, and if I am not here, things are actually worse.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, it was an amazing setup place, so there wasn't a lot of fallback contingencies. The guy who owned it was on holiday,
Mm,
and he wasn't going to come back for the likes of me, so that was the other half of that problem. But
yeah. Oh, mine's a little bit different, but yeah, I haven't talked about that in a while. About steam engines. Um,
no,
yeah.
we're 2 hours in. Do you want to start talking about your
Eh, I can do
teenagers
the spiel in 5 minutes.
now?
Well, this side of it at least. But yeah, designing steam engines to provide sustainable energy and with
It's certainly a noble mission.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Like Teslas don't work in Africa. These will. Teslas don't work on Pacific Islands because you got to build something to charge them. These will charge the Tesla,
Yeah,
and then you can drive around the island or do whatever. Um, but like it's a long, slow process, so there's no sort of immediate consequences for not being there, which is good when you've got a kid in school and the number of bugs there are going around school. But at the same time, today I was looking at the folder of the calculators I'd made. It's like a dozen spreadsheets calculating different things. Like one I was working on today was that if you've got a hole, an annular orifice, say the gap around a piston, that's 0.025 millimeters wide, um, overall diameter difference, so 0.0125 millimeter gap, and it's 18 millimeters in diameter and 5 millimeters high, and it's 20 atmospheres of pressure on one side and 1 atmosphere on the other of high temperature steam. How much is going to leak around the edge? And this will do it for any size hole, any length pipe, whatever. You put the numbers in and play with it a bit. It's a finicky one, but it does the job. And it's like there's like a dozen spreadsheets like that for calculating different things for particular parts of this thing. And it's like, yeah, I built something and we're using it. And it's satisfying.
I wouldn't mind having one of those to run my house.
A steam engine.
Yeah.
Well, we'll probably have a 5 kilowatt model in the future, which is about
Yeah,
one
like
house
if I could
size.
have a little generator out the back that doesn't run on diesel but runs on like firewood,
Yeah,
I'd be pretty keen on that. I
yeah,
got
and you get
plenty of firewood here, and I don't know how to fix a solar panel.
Yeah, and you
Um,
get about 6 kilowatts of heat for every kilowatt of electricity, so you can heat the house with it at the same time. You've
you just
got
need
the
what
exhaust hot.
transfer systems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, that's valuable. Heat and yeah, a fire that generates electricity is a
Mm.
huge deal. Is it loud? It didn't make
Uh,
noise.
Probably similar overall noise level to an equivalent petrol generator. Less, I'd say, than that probably, because that's more
Hmm.
rapid explosions or burning in the uh, piston, whereas a steam engine, it's quite as of chuff, 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 but then you've got the chuffing noise out the funnel, which is arguably
Yeah,
more aesthetic and yeah.
yeah, yeah. The heating thing would be interesting. You'd want to be able to switch it on and off because you'd still want to run it on a hot day to power stuff, but not have it
Oh,
heat your house.
definitely. So you'd have a heat exchanger that sits on top of the funnel and it has some pipes, and you just stop circulating the water, or you use that
Mm.
to heat up the water before it goes in the tank or
Yeah,
something.
have a whole bunch of radiators around the house and then have central heating based through it.
Yeah,
That's cool. I like that.
yeah.
Maybe.
You,
Yeah,
but you can use
I
the,
might want to put one down here. Depends how much it costs.
yeah.
Um,
You can
but
heat.
yeah,
You
if
can
the
do
power
cooking with
goes
it as
out,
well.
if power goes out here, it's a real
Yeah.
problem. Because yeah, we've got power lines like, well, not above us, they're down that way more, but we got major transmission lines running through our farm.
Mm.
So if power's out for this area, it's out like everywhere.
Uh,
And yeah, obviously you got other problems with that, but it's a better backup than a diesel generator, that's for sure.
mm.
Long run, you know,
Yeah.
having things like that distributed around the nation is a great insurance policy for humanity.
Oh yeah. Like our first product that we're trying to bring to market, and we've already got 5 pre-orders and more interest than that, and so on. There's a 35 horsepower tractor. Um, it's not everything that a modern tractor is. It's sort of stripped down minimum viable product, but
Well,
um,
35 horsepower is not a lot.
yeah, it's a Massey Ferguson 35 running on steam basically, but it doesn't have a 3-point hitch, just a tow linkage, and power takeoff would be belt drive in a cage to something else. And yeah, it's not a full tractor
3-point
yet.
linkage would be real good.
There's
Just for
issues about
towing.
how big. Oh yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
there's issues about how to attach that because of stuff getting in the way. Reasons.
Oh, right. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, you need big bunkers for the fuel and the water, and that gets in the way of where the 3-point linkage would normally go. But yeah, she runs at 20 atmospheres of pressure and explosion proof. Like, no, it can't. It's a much safer design. I'll leave the details off, but if
What
anyone's
kind of
interested in
cost?
Maxwell,
What kind
about
of cost are
100
you looking at?
grand, about 100 grand for one of them. Which, okay, if you compare it to a diesel tractor, it's much more expensive, but then you're buying diesel all the time. If you're
Yeah.
comparing it to a electric tractor, those in New Zealand are 200 grand getting them to the gate. So it's half the price of an equivalent electric tractor.
Yeah. I
And
think like
yeah,
you have a value proposition, and I think as you scale up and find a way to make them cheaper, then that's going to make way more sense.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And bigger
obviously you're at
ones are
small
easier.
scale now, but if you get to the point where you can do the same model for 50 grand, then you have a hell of a better argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, and secondhand market for those things would be great too. But
Oh yeah, yeah. 100-year lifetime we want to do or want to
yeah,
achieve.
yeah, but yeah, a small home unit I think would actually probably be more of a viable solution for what product direction.
Well,
I think it'd be more successful. Say that.
the 5 kilowatt was considered as the first one to start with, but the part count ends up being similar to the 35 horsepower one. Um, and you get a better profit margin to make it viable at the 35 horsepower level. And it was a case of what's the
You
mode,
transfer
what
that
has the
into kilowatt output.
26. So it's the
Okay,
G26 or A35,
so that's yeah, that's better. If it's relatively similar in terms of both, then it might as well be that one.
the
Yeah.
G26.
No, like what I mean is, if you say that if part cost and therefore ending up being actual cost is relatively similar between 5 kilowatt and like 26 kilowatt, then you might as well go with the better off system.
Yeah. Or at least the development cost similar, because you got to try and miniaturize everything a lot more for the 5 kilowatt one, and
Yeah.
it'll be similar part count for a 600 kilowatt one, which there's been interest for.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Well, that's going to be useful.
the prototype boiler that was built to demonstrate and prove the parts of the system that are different from what's been done before, which is the boiler rather than the engine. That was designed to put out 400 shaft horsepower, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, 3% of the water of a conventional boiler, fraction of the heat up time. We're going to put automatic lubrication in and boiler management and firebox management and so on. So you just keep the fire going with enough fuel and drive the vehicle. Put forward lever to go forward, and then to slow down, like as the brake, you put the lever in reverse, and that changes the valve timing, and then the engine slows itself down. And then when you want to go in reverse, you put it backwards, drive it intelligently, so you don't end up just doing that. But the engine spins backwards when you want to go backwards, so there's no reverse gear.
Yeah, I think
And,
it's
yeah.
Yeah, most of the people I've talked to about it in this industry have been real interested to see where it goes. But yeah, it's got to. By the time you get to our industry, you got to be pretty established in smaller sectors everywhere else.
Yeah,
because we need a lot more from tractors than like the big one that you're talking about. That'd be very useful for us, and even the smaller one. But it's things like hydraulics that are the killer thing for us.
Yeah. Well, down the track, that won't be difficult. Like, I'm looking forward to working that out, because a hydraulic power pack running off a diesel engine, the diesel engine can't stop spinning. So the hydraulic power pack has to keep spinning.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a steam engine, it can be set up to have the steam pressure in insulated cylinders so they stay hot and you don't get condensation. And then it spins the pump, and then the oil flow stops, so the pump stops, so the steam engine stops. Pressure's still there. And as soon as the oil flow starts again, the whole thing spins again and then stops, and spins again and stops. And have a little accumulator so you balance out short term.
It'd be unbelievably useful for the stuff that we do. Because yeah, a lot of the time we're having to leave the tractor on and get out and do other stuff. And then operate things. But if it was just off and then we pull a switch and does the thing.
Just when the oil pressure drops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a separate motor, because most of the volume's in the boiler. And the power to weight ratio for the boiler and the engine is similar to a diesel for us. And a little bit like a hydraulic system, the engine itself is relatively small compared to the whole system. So you just have another engine for another purpose once we get that worked out.
Yeah, and that's okay. As soon as you can put hydraulic arms and hydraulic pumps, so you can run, joiners onto the back and a 3-point linkage to tow stuff, you'll get sales in our industry.
Yeah.
Because if we could run our tractors on the massive amounts of firewood that we have on every farm, it would be down.
Yeah. We're not there yet. There's
no, for sure. But
and we've got a niche.
And look, for us, it's going to be better than electric. Because electric's just not ever going to cut it in our industry.
Yeah.
Now, it can be fine for transport, it can be fine for civilian use, that's fine. But when it comes to heavy machinery, it's just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're right about your oil predictions, then we're going to need replacements.
Yeah.
And like you said before, we make the food. And the reason why it's like 1% of the population that makes all the food is things like tractors. And if we all of a sudden don't have them anymore, guess who's not eating?
New Zealand's ridiculously efficient.
You guys don't. Yeah, we're the most efficient farmers of the planet.
Yeah, like we've got 1% of our population. We've got what would that be? 1% of 5 million. What's that? 50,000 making enough
5,
food. No, it's only 2 zeros.
Is it?
For 1%, not 3 zeros.
Okay.
Yeah, so 50,000 people making enough food, 50 million, because we export most of our food. Yeah. So that is 1,000-fold. Yeah,
Yeah, no, we're great. There's like 50 million heads of cattle in the country.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
How much
1 to
sheep?
1,000.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
and all the sheep.
yeah, yeah, lots more sheep than people too, and yeah, like the steam engine would probably be less automated than at least in the early stages, definitely less automated than a diesel. But then there's established systems. Have you frozen? Is the internet? Can you still hear me?
One. I think.
So
Yes.
we were talking about steam engines and reliable equipment, and then the high tech electronics are failing. So we're
Yeah.
something's about to die, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that
Bye.
is gonna hold it, so we'll have to cut it off there. Yeah, bye. Sorry. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.